Starkenfaust breathed heavily and cried a brave tear about the early death of his friend. He was worried about the difficult task he had agreed to carry out. He also felt anxious that he had to go as an unknown guest to unfriendly people and end their hopes and joy with such bad news. However, he was curious to meet this famous beauty so carefully shut away from the world in Katzenelnbogen. Starkenfaust was a daring man and a great admirer of women. He thought to himself that he was very interested in this odd situation that might even turn into an adventure. Before he left, he made all the necessary funeral arrangements for the burial of his friend in the Würzburg church. The Count was to be buried near a number of his famous relatives, so his body was left in the care of his unwilling escorts. Meanwhile, the family of Katzenelnbogen was waiting impatiently for their guest and even more for their dinner. The good little Baron was still up on the tower, not knowing what to do next. Night closed in, but still no visitor had arrived. The Baron came down from the tower in a state of deep melancholy. The meal, which had already been kept warm for hours, could no longer be delayed. The meat was already dried out, the cook upset, and the whole household had the look of an army that hadn't been fed for weeks. The Baron was forced to give orders for the meal to start without the expected guest. Everyone was seated at the table, ready to start eating, when the sound of a horn from outside the castle gave warning that someone was coming. Another long sound was answered by the guard on the castle walls. The Baron hurried to greet his daughter's future bridegroom. The bridge had been dropped down as the stranger came through the gate. He was a tall, handsome soldier, sitting high on a black horse. His eyes were bright and observant in a pale face, and he sat with a look of impressive melancholy. The Baron was ashamed and annoyed that the soldier arrived on his own. At first he considered the man had not shown proper respect for the important occasion or for the important family he would be joining. Later, he calmed himself, thinking that it was due to impatience that the young man had ridden alone. "I am sorry," said the stranger, "to impose on you at such a time." Here the Baron interrupted him with words of praise and welcome because he was proud of his good manners and speech. The stranger tried to interrupt the flow of words several times without success. Finally, he bowed his head politely and waited. By the time the Baron paused, they had reached the inner court of the castle, and the stranger tried again to speak. This time he was interrupted by the arrival of the aunts leading out the embarrassed bride. He stared at the beautiful girl in delight and wondered if he was dreaming. One of the aunts whispered something in the bride's ear. She raised her eyes to look shyly at the stranger and made an effort to speak. She looked down again, and the words died away. There was a sweet smile on her face, which showed she was pleased with what she saw. It was impossible for a girl of 18, interested in love and marriage, not to be pleased with such a handsome bridegroom. The guest had arrived too late for any further conversation that night, so the Baron led the way to the dining tables. The food was served in the great hall of the castle. Around the walls hung the severe faces and battle prizes of the heroes of the house of Katzenelnbogen. The soldier took little notice of the company or the entertainment. He hardly tasted the food, but seemed absorbed in admiration of his bride. He spoke in a low voice that could not be heard by other people. What female cannot hear the softest whisper of her lover? His serious but kind manner appeared to have a powerful effect on the young lady. Her face was pink as she listened to him with deep attention. Occasionally, she made some shy reply. When he turned away, she would take a quick look at his handsome face and breathe out with happiness. It was obvious that the young couple was attracted to each other. The aunts, who knew all about the ways of romance, declared that they had fallen in love with each other at first sight. The meal went on happily and noisily, for the guests all had the healthy interest in food that goes with the fresh mountain air and very little money of their own. The Baron told his best and longest stories, and had never told them so well or with such great effect. When he spoke of something strange, the guests were amazed. If his speech were funny, everyone laughed in the right places. The Baron, like most great men, was too proper to tell a joke that was rude. However, even his dull jokes were always made better by some excellent wine. Other people told the rude jokes that could only be told at a special celebration. Many sly comments were whispered in the ladies' ears that made them laugh behind their hands. Sometimes a song or two sung by a poor but drunk cousin of the Baron absolutely made the single aunts hide their faces.